There is a word that makes gardeners drop their guard immediately: organic. And few substances wear that word as a shield quite like elemental sulfur. It is ancient, it's mined from the earth, and every label on it says some version of safe and organic production. But here is the thing: sulfur isn't gentle because it's natural. It is brutal precisely because it is not picky. And once you understand how it actually kills, the whole safe and natural pitch starts to fall apart. Welcome to my deep dive on elemental sulfur. I hope you learned something new in this video, and I hope this gives you some insight to a new perspective as it did for me. And if it looks like I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at my camera, or I'm looking at the screen as I'm talking. So let's start with the beneficial insects that nobody really talks about. Sulfur does not have a lock and key biochemical target the same way that other synthetic pesticides do. It works more like sandpaper and smoke, a physical and respiratory irritant. That's actually its selling point, since pests can't evolve resistance to something that's basically a chemical burn. But that same lack of precision means it can't tell a fungus from a ladybug from the predator mite you were counting on to do your pest control for free. There is real research on this, and the pattern is almost darkly funny, but not really. In lab trials, lime sulfur turned out to be more toxic to predatory mites than it was to the actual pests they were hired to eat, the two-spotted spider mite. The predators ironically get hit harder because they are the ones moving, hunting across treated foliage while their prey sits still. Kill the hunters and leave the herbivores standing, and you get exactly what several field studies have documented in vineyards and hop yards: sulfur applications followed by secondary spider mite outbreaks, because the pest rebounds faster than the predator does. So it is an organic gardener's dilemma. The very tool marketed to protect your beneficial insect population can be the thing that actually guts it. Of course, regulators will tell you that sulfur is non-toxic to honeybees on an acute oral basis, meaning if a bee ate it, it likely would not die outright, but that is a narrow test, and it skips almost everything that a bee actually experiences in the field. Dry sulfur dust clings to bees' static charged body hair. It is a known eye and respiratory irritant, and for butterfly larvae and caterpillars, direct contact with sulfur residue can be lethal outright. None of that shows up on a non-toxic to bees label, because that label was never measuring it in the first place. So what happens underground? Well, sulfur's other quiet trick happens in the soil, and it is chemistry, not folklore. Soil bacteria oxidize elemental sulfur into sulfuric acid. Farmers actually use this intentionally to correct alkaline soil, but apply that same amount of sulfur to soil that's already neutral or acidic, and you can crash the pH. Once that happens, sensitive soil microbes, earthworms, and mycorrhizal fungi your plant roots depend on start dying off. Acidified soil also leaches away calcium and magnesium while mobilizing aluminum, a metal that stunts roots and chokes off water intake. I'm not exactly saying that every sulfur application harms soil life, and studies have reported reduced earthworm abundance under strong acidification. And further research suggests that mycorrhizal responses do vary by fungal species and the soil pH, where major pH changes can alter colonization, not universally kill fungi. Regardless, these are consequences of excess soil acidification. It's not necessarily expected from correct label rate use, and low pH can increase aluminum solubility and base cation loss. So just take that information as you will. So it's just a mineral argument really falls apart here. Minerals absolutely have consequences at the wrong concentration in the wrong soil. So where does sulfur end up after you sprinkle it on your crops? Well, sulfur does not stay where you put it. It is not rocket science. Rain washes it off the leaves and into runoff. And here's where it gets genuinely dangerous for aquatic life. Elemental sulfur is highly insoluble in water. So heavy rain can wash suspended particles into ponds and streams. So once it's converted into sulfates by aquatic microbes, it also contributes to localized water acidification, hammering biodiversity in sensitive waterways. Here is what regulations actually say, and here is where I want to be precise, because this is the section people misquote constantly, myself included in the first draft of this video. I learned a lot. The EPA does not exempt sulfur residues from a food tolerance requirement, meaning residue left on produce isn't considered a dietary hazard, but in the same breath, sulfur products labels carry a mandatory restricted entry interval, commonly 24 hours, and even some formulations specify longer, during which field workers cannot re-enter treated areas without protective gear because it's a documented skin, eye, and respiratory irritant. That's the whole rebuttal in one sentence. A chemical can be cleared for your dinner plate and still be a real hazard to the person who applied it or the bee that flew through it an hour later. And I know there's going to be some pushback to this video, which is why I've done extensive research, because I wondered these same questions. So here are some questions I wondered. You might say it's natural, so it belongs in the environment. I thought so too, which led me down this rabbit hole. Lead is natural too, so is arsenic, and nobody's spreading that across a field or in their garden. The issue was never origin, it is concentration. A little sulfur released by a volcano is not the same as pounds of it per acre across a monoculture. You also might say sulfur does not cause resistance like synthetic pesticides do. That is true, and that is exactly the problem. It does not cause resistance because it is not targeted. It is a blunt force irritant. That is the same reason it can't tell a ladybug from a pest. You could also argue that the EPA calls it safe, but safe for what exactly? Safe for the food? Not safe enough to skip a 24-hour re-entry restriction, or the humans applying it, or free of consequence for the pollinators. I want to say that none of this means that sulfur is evil or that synthetic alternatives are automatically better. That's its own complicated conversation. What means is that organic is never a synonym for harmless. It is a label about origin, not a verdict on ecological impact. And next time a product that leans hard on the word to sell you comfort, it's worth asking what exactly they're not telling you. I hope you learned something new today. Let me know if you were surprised by all of this in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, friends.